Of the plethora of acclaimed game studios currently working, there are but a handful that rise above the rest into the golden echelons of player trust and loyalty, and I believe that Japanese developer FromSoftware now stands among them. In the last decade, FromSoftware was launched from a relatively small niche developer known for games such as Armored Core and Tenchu, into video game stardom with the success of their brutally punishing dark fantasy RPG franchise, Dark Souls. Beginning in spirit with 2009's Demon's Souls, and then gaining true momentum with the original Dark Souls in 2011, FromSoftware and the Souls games have since become a household name in the gaming industry, even going so far as to inspire their own genre of copycat games dubbed Souls-like. Since the success of the Dark Souls games, video game journalists have taken to referring to any mildly challenging title as the Dark Souls of its respective genre, a trope that has since become a bit of a meme. Regardless, it would be folly to suggest that FromSoftware hasn't had a significant influence on the industry, but something about their game design stands out. Since Dark Souls, FromSoftware have released 4 mainline titles of Souls-like caliber, including 2 sequels, the gothic masterpiece Bloodborne, and 2019's Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. And with every single release, FromSoftware have shown themselves to be consistently brilliant. Despite how great they are, FromSoftware's Souls titles don't take particularly long to make by modern gaming standards. 2009 gave us Demon's Souls, 2011 gave us Dark Souls, we had Dark Souls 2 in 2014, Bloodborne in 2015, and Dark Souls 3 in 2016. That means that for 3 consecutive years, FromSoftware gave us a new Souls game, counting Bloodborne. In fact, Sekiro's 2019 release marks the longest time between FromSoftware releases since their first Souls game, with a gap of 3 years since Dark Souls 3. However, those years were not empty, oh no, because in late 2016 we had the Dark Souls 3 Ashes of Ariandel expansion, and 2017 gave us the Ringed City. And last year in 2019, just a handful of months after the release of Sekiro, E3 gave us our first look at FromSoftware's next delve into dark fantasy, Elden Ring. Now whilst there has yet to be a set release date for Elden Ring, it's likely we'll have another teaser at this year's E3. Judging by FromSoftware's history of release schedules, Elden Ring will probably be set for a spring 2021 release, which would mark 2 years since Sekiro. Now this shows us that FromSoftware developed their games to completion at impressive speeds, and what's more impressive is that every one of their Souls games have been consistently good. Since Demon's Souls, I don't think one of FromSoftware's Souls games, and that's including Bloodborne and Sekiro, has been bad. And that's including my least favourite of the bunch, Dark Souls 2. Now, straight off the bat, I'm not going to talk about Demon's Souls, because I've never played it. Yes, I know, sinful of me. As a huge FromSoftware fan, I really should have played it by now, but I don't own a PS3 and I don't plan on getting one just to play it. If a remaster is released on the PS4, I'll probably get it, but as of yet, Demon's Souls is an experience I have yet to enjoy. Right, let's get into the good stuff. Dark Souls. I fucking love this game so damn much. I have so much nostalgia for this game, it's unreal. Despite its flaws, I think Dark Souls is as close to perfection as most games can hope to get. As my first delve into FromSoftware's brutally beautiful style of game design, the original Dark Souls holds a special place in my heart as one of my favourite games of all time. Whilst it does suffer from some badly aged graphics, frequent frame rate drops on the consoles, and unfinished areas, as well as one truly awful boss fight, I think that Dark Souls holds the beacon for FromSoftware's best world design yet. The original Dark Souls achieves a sense of space and scope that, as of yet, FromSoftware hasn't recaptured. The way the world binds together and intertwines is just captivating, and more than anything, Dark Souls is the game responsible for launching FromSoftware into stardom, with the game's dark and brooding atmosphere and punishing difficulty earning it critical renown across the industry. This was the game that started it all. This was the game that drove you to battle on through its entirety just so you could say those special words. I've beaten Dark Souls. This game gave us joy, frustration, euphoria, fury, and sadness. It is undoubtedly an imperfect masterpiece. Dark Souls 2 is a game that gets a lot of hate in the community, and it's understandable. The game is the black sheep of the franchise, the only game out of Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro not to be directed by the legendary Hidetaka Miyazaki, who was busy working on Bloodborne whilst Dark Souls 2 was in development. And honestly, it kinda shows. Dark Souls 2 is the game that feels like it was made by someone else, with a different vision. A frequent analysis of this game by the fanbase is that it's a good game, but a bad Souls game. And I'd somewhat agree with this, but I think that Dark Souls 2 gets more criticism than it deserves. Sure, it has a lot of flaws, it's probably the most flawed game in the series, but it's still good. It's really good, actually. The game has a lot of original ideas and concepts that are unique to Dark Souls 2. And since I didn't get a PS4 until a year after Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 2 was the main Souls game I played between 2014 and 16. I poured hundreds of hours into that game and all 3 of its DLCs, which are personally my favourite areas of the game. And whilst Dark Souls 2 doesn't really live up to the high standards set by its predecessor, I certainly don't think that it's a bad game by any stretch. I think that there are 2 main issues that Dark Souls 2 suffers from. First, it doesn't feel like a continuation of the series, it feels like this weird standalone game that doesn't really fit between Dark Souls 1 and 3. It has very few obvious links back to the first Dark Souls, and those that are present are often hidden and incredibly ambiguous. Second, Dark Souls 2 is the epitome of quantity over quality. The game is long, much longer than it needs to be, and it has far, far more areas and bosses than any other game in the series. The areas are also incredibly linear, removing that amazing sense of exploration and openness that was present in the first game. There are very few bosses in Dark Souls 2 that stand out and feel memorable, and those that are almost exclusive to the post-release DLC. Dark Souls 2 is a game that FromSoftware threw everything at the wall to see what stuck, and as a result it feels bloated and meandering. However, despite this, I still very much enjoy Dark Souls 2 and still occasionally go back to it. 2015 saw us entranced by FromSoftware's masterpiece of Lovecraftian horror, Bloodborne. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this game because I think that would be a video in itself, and most of you probably already know how great this game is. From its haunting visuals to terrifying boss fights, Bloodborne is a game that oozes originality and attention to detail. Very few games out there are crafted with such a degree of care as Bloodborne. The combat system of Bloodborne is one of FromSoftware's best, and the versatility of the hunter trick weapons make for a vicious arsenal that tempt you with multiple playthroughs. Bloodborne also has probably the most interesting storyline of any of their games. It's the perfect horror title, and if it wasn't for the Chalice dungeons, which I find to be an uninteresting, tacked-on aspect of the game that take away from the good stuff, it will probably be my favourite FromSoftware game. Dark Souls 3 is great. It's a really gorgeous looking, challenging game with some of the best visuals and set pieces in the series. It also has the best customization options, and Fashion Souls wins out here. I also think that Dark Souls 3 has the best selection of FromSoftware bosses ever, and whilst the dull opening areas and level design is somewhat lacking and uninspired, it's the bosses of Dark Souls 3 that keep me playing it. That and Siegward. I think that out of all the games, Dark Souls 3 comes the closest to recapturing the magic of the original Dark Souls. The DLC for Dark Souls 3 is also great. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is the shit. This game is so much fun, I actually cannot even. I don't think that any game that came out last year was even close to being as deserving of the Game of the Year award as Sekiro was. This game came out almost a year ago and it's still the game I'm playing the most. I just cannot get enough of it. It's so addicting and well designed and beautiful and balanced and enjoyable that it keeps drawing me back to it. I'm like halfway through a 9th playthrough of this game. And one thing I've noticed is that even despite how much I've played and despite how instinctively I react to the combat, this game still has the potential to kick my ass. This is FromSoftware and Miyazaki at their best. It's challenging, the world is beautiful and intricately woven together, the lore is deep and fascinating, the story is original and compelling, the bosses are awesome in both spectacle and difficulty, and god damn the combat. The combat in Sekiro is, and I'm not exaggerating here, some of the best, most well-balanced and most satisfying melee combat I have ever experienced in a video game. The learning curve actually feels like a learning curve. As the game progresses, your skills with Kusabi Maru progress along with it, and by the end of the game the clashing dance of deflects and attacks feels like second nature. and what's so great about it is that the combat is so simple. Excluding prosthetic weapons and combat arts, the base swordplay of the game is literally just a balance of timing blocks and counterattacks, but when you nail it, breaking an enemy's posture with perfect deflex and spraying blood in a shower like a goddamn Kurosawa film, it's the most satisfying feeling in the world. To hell with parries, death blows are where it's at. Now I know that a lot of fans weren't satisfied with Sekiro's lack of FromSoftware's characteristic RPG elements, and I can understand that, but honestly it didn't bother me. It still doesn't. Whilst I wouldn't say that Sekiro is FromSoftware's best game, it's my personal favourite, and is a perfect example of FromSoftware's consistent brilliance. I'd like to take a moment just to talk about the soundtracks of these games, because whilst these games get a lot of praise, I think that their amazingly epic soundtracks is something that gets criminally overlooked. I already think that film and video game scores go unappreciated, and that's a video on its own. But here I just want to draw some appreciation towards these incredible composers, because honestly, I think they're some of the best in gaming. Dark Souls 1 soundtrack was scored entirely by the incredible Motoi Sakuraba, whilst the scores of Dark Souls 2, 3 and Bloodborne were created by a variety of composers including Sakuraba and others such as Tosaka Saito, Nobuyoshi Suzuki, Ryan Amon and Chris Valesco, who created Bloodborne's hauntingly beautiful main theme. And last, but by certainly no means least, we have the queen of Souls soundtracks, Yuka Kitamura, who not only created some of the best pieces of music in Dark Souls 2, 3 and Bloodborne, but composed the full, sword-shatteringly awesome score of Sekiro in its entirety. Did I also mention that she performed the female vocals for the Ashes of Ariandel and Ring City soundtracks? Yeah, that woman can make music, and I beg that she is recommissioned to work on Elden Ring. The popularity and acclaim of FromSoftware's games has created an amazing community online and a dedicated fanbase of players. People love playing these games and watching people playing these games. These games have an amazing ability to create entirely unique styles of play, and no two people will have the same experience with any of these games. The crushing difficulty has created this surge of popularity for challenging games, as well as a plethora of entertaining rage quit montages. I've confidence in claiming that FromSoftware games have the best boss fights in gaming. You've got the sad and the melancholic like Gwyn, Gehrman, Gwyndolin, Sif, the Abyss Watchers, Vendrick, terrifying bosses like Ludwig, Lawrence, the Gaping Dragon and the Demon of Hatred, awesome one-on-one duels like Lady Maria, Cirillon, the Fume Knight, Knight Artorias, Genichiro and Ishinashina, Pontiff Sullivan, and who could forget? Some of their bosses make for incredible set pieces like the Ancient Wyvern, the Folding Screen Monkeys, the Bed of Chaos, Mikolash and High Lord Walnir. There are the beautiful like the Moonlight Butterfly, the Soul of Cinder, the Burnt Ivory King, Emma the Gentle Blade, and those that are just epic. Ornstein and Smau's Sister Frida, the Nameless King, the Orphan of Kos, the Divine Dragon, the Twin Princes, Yom the Giant, Slave Knight Gale, and Ishin the Sword Saint. And of course, the greatest boss of all time, Roz from Monsters Inc.
Wazowski.
Speaking of epic bosses, FromSoftware know how to do dragons. Calamite, the Ancient Dragon, Sin, Dark Eater Medea, the Divine Dragon, all awesome. None of this weak-ass, two-legged, mild annoyance shit. When a dragon shows up in a FromSoftware game, you know it's about to kick off. FromSoftware's amazing game design, which can be heavily attributed to Hidetaka Miyazaki's incredible vision, has crafted some of the most enchanting stories and game worlds out there, whilst often bleak and hopeless, games in the Soulsborne series... Wait, Soulsborne? Seki Souls? Games in the Dark Souls, Bloodborne and Sekiro series hold beautifully rich, emotionally weighted narratives that are often hidden within the environments you explore. This style of environmental storytelling has become a staple of Miyazaki's game design, and is a testament to FromSoftware's admirable attention to detail. People have built entire YouTube channels around uncovering the secrets and stories of these games. Unlike many titles, FromSoftware doesn't spoon-feed you the story. It's often something you have to go out and piece together yourself, adding a multitude of hidden layers to these games. The fact that players can spend months after release unearthing mysteries and building theories for the lore behind these games is incredible. However, there is a final aspect of these games that I think raises them even higher in my estimation. The main reason I find FromSoftware games to have brilliance and consistency is that they are incredibly replayable. Dark Souls was the first game I ever restarted as soon as I'd completed it. All these games can be played time and time again, and I think that that's truly their best quality. I love these games because I find them difficult to get bored of. FromSoftware is a company that has earned my admiration and my trust through their consistent delivery of fun, challenging, beautifully crafted, replayable games, and Elden Ring can't come soon enough. The challenge and difficulty of these games is addicting as hell. I don't know what it is that makes being punished by these games so fun and enticing that we keep coming back to them no matter how many times they beat us down. Maybe the popularity of these games is due to some mass sense of video game masochism. Whatever the case, it's hard to deny how addicting these games are, because for some reason, being repeatedly and brutally punished by these games just feels too damn good. I just realised, what are we going to call it when Elden Ring comes out? Seki Soulsborne is already a mouthful. Elden Seki Soulsborne. Blood and Soul Zero. Seki Soldenborn. Yeah, that's the one. Can't wait for the next game in Seki Soldenborn.